So, what are some things we can do to support reading in children with autism? Well, the first thing we can do is have high expectations for children with autism. Miranda says, children with autism often do not learn to read, write, and spell because they are not taught. Many times we use outdated modes of literacy instruction that we used to use with typically developing students, and we're trying to apply it now to children with autism. They get the basal readers from 20 years ago, things like that. I think partly because there are many children who are nonverbal. They have expectations that are very low. And then they see the splinter skills, the hyperlexia, the print awareness, not as being relevant because they have autism, instead of understanding that that's a wonderful jumping off place. And many times students with autism are regarded as too cognitively impaired or held to a readiness application. And we know that many children with autism learn to read quite easily without passing those readiness skills of rhyming and things like that. So we have to be very careful. There's also evidence that promotion of reading skills helps some students with ASD advance their oral language skills, as in that first quote that we talked about. So there's no set time to teach play, cognitive, social, and language skills. Therefore, there's really no set time to begin to teach reading. We learn about reading and early literacy from birth almost, learning to segment words, learning to enjoy rhyme, learning that mom's grocery list is important, that people write things down. All of those things emerge very early on, and we shouldn't view the path of a child with autism any different. Spoken language ability should not be viewed as a prerequisite for literacy learning. So, as I said before, there are very few studies. There are 11 peer-reviewed studies related to intervention, including children with ASD. 4 of those are computer-based instruction on learning phonemic awareness. 5 were based on cooperative learning or peer supports. One based on reading comprehension strategies, and 1 with a one-to-one direct reading directions in trials. So not really reading program, just teaching them to read and follow directions. The others in this meta-linguistic analysis didn't meet the criteria. And then others had general recommendations, but they were not really studies, so they were not included. So let's talk about shared storybook reading. Research overwhelmingly supports the effectiveness of storybook sharing or shared storybook reading or dialogic reading, however you want to talk about, for increasing vocabulary development, for increasing general language development, and for supporting emergent literacy knowledge. It's really a popular language intervention context, and it has a lot of increased popularity within the response to intervention process because we're looking increasingly more at how to prevent reading problems before they happen. So the beginnings of shared storybook reading focused on dialogic reading. So White, Hurst, and colleagues designed a program where adults, either parents or teachers, were paired with preschoolers, and they trained them to ask open-ended questions about the storybook, to expand children's verbal contributions about the storybook, and to praise and encourage these contributions to the discussion. An additional method was also shown in Fieldy, Barnsley, and Purdy, where they showed that commenting about the storybook was shown to positively increase the number of verbal interactions between teacher and child or parent and child, and to positively impact early literacy skills. So shared storybook reading with ASD is a little more scant than the scientific support for shared storybook reading for others, but it is encouraging. There's been several single case studies, case examples that have shown that it increases language and it increases early literacy skills. However, we have to be careful because children with autism engage differently in joint storybook reading. Engagement's not the same for everyone, so the methods used by others may not be exactly the same. We really have seen that parental behaviors when reading books with children who have language impairment have shown some important difference in child engagement, and that varies as a function of reading style by the parent or by the teacher. So it's been suggested that the selection of successful strategies used in shared storybook reading with some children may need to be specifically tailored to really ensure engagement and linguistic process. I've personally noticed that your style and focus and interest is very important with children with autism.